비스카나바. Kai man det en gig. Bindagen de kadek. Dagi biskanaaba. Mikshagnawe. Na hanga babia we bipskabit kya bebeshikna. Kya bebeshik we babiana. Pokeru giba babijige. Kinamda be pokeru. Anishnapi wa bipskabiat nendam pokeru. Kinauia, man de eamek nee. Kinaubiana, kin pajbien. Kinaubian, kinagego kinaubiana. Apishmanda. Kinaubian gogegi. Mi wanting na bach kinauia. Kija, Gadona Nagadawendam, Wakwidwig, Gadona Nagadawendam, oh, Mandanga Quejmamanyan, Gadendam. Gadona Nagadawendam, Mandanga Quejmamanyan. Gat come wash gun. Git come wash gun pokeru. Yeah, we should get the abish.
When I'm using two verbs, a lot of the time one of them is in A form and then the next one is in B form.
B form meaning conjunct?
Conjunct form. Okay. And often in English I'm trying to translate a little word to. Like I'm going home to see my parents, or
I'm going to the store to get some milk.
Yeah, or I bought a new car to
use to go to work.
Or and then sometimes the translation or the sentence in Nishnaabemwin has nothing in there, like just the two verbs. Sometimes there's a je, or sometimes there's a we, or sometimes there's a da, and I don't really know how you know which one to use.
Nee. Apish nondaman. I'm trying to recall offhand. Apish kiam daman magi. Mean just man pin most on the band. Pane. Wamdana. Oh, Kessan. Kesna nishinon kishgon. Mandago. Apajago. Gotchin mean just Peters Gujim the Godek. Mem de Gego do Moston. Apajago the Gotchin, the Pru Gatchabia. can you think of where the examples are coming from? Like when you see them? I'm trying to think if it's me that's jumping, sort of changing them. Like I rarely use j, it seems, just offhand. I don't tend to use j, but I know it's used quite often by some speakers. It sort of seems like, to me, da and j seem to be interchangeable. Now, historically, I mean, languages change over time. So I don't know historically if there's some kind of different connotation if you said j versus da. Or it might be that just that one habit of speech starts to predominate among speakers. So I just tend to come out with da when I hear others, whereas I hear some others use j. So I'm thinking they might be interchangeable. But usually if I have a bunch of examples, then I can sort of test. Okay. Now, we usually, that seems to line up oftentimes, maybe, probably not all the time, with like, it's like the English of the, equivalent of the English infinitive, I think. Like, 다이금 공 데자 도도 샤보 위나디야. It's still conjunct suffix, but it's we. Yeah, because I'm thinking more like infinitive, to get some milk, to get milk. So, now, nga CB야는 난다 캐나. 개고야 백회진담 퀸든 개쾌제 키디엄바 Nishnaabemwin. 녹회진담 퀸든 아니시피 제 이게나 카시엄바 기아부고 베직 민지스 기밈다고래. 난것 넣고 Giizing de beage, 난것 넣고 Niibing de 미지선테는. 도마지 pasquebing de benen denendam, 만든 도시치게. 그거지나만 비방기 그냥 미식가논 미지선 denendam. 예, 예. Nou, nee, manti gibijibi moit, man de basic Eshki-nishnaabemjig nee, ik weet het, gibijibi mak. Manti, misschien de mouwen, kwetje na nagadowendem, ginendem, dus ga je dus gide na nagadowendesi, kego, nochkego im kwendema, ke kiddingeba, man pigon gitonwe, pish nguje man pigito, nguje go man pite. Amanda, Niibing, uya, gegwedwet. Swegego hijibian, gjetoin, Eshki-nishnaabemjig, kikwedwe, wegenesh ushme emna taguk, kikwedwe, anidash. Nou, deja daigam gung jigispana kapkwejigan. Deja daigam gung wigispana kapkwejigan. Deja daigam gung gispana kapkwejigan. Mai. Gispen kidien daigam gung deja gispana kapkwejigan. Mana tagotuga. Nee, nou, nee na bachin dashin system okin. Geigum na tagot Daigam gong disha wigispna na kwezgan gego im na tagot. Daigam gong disha chigispna na kwezgan. Uwe nin gunage ni ga in dunta na kasinche. Mi gwetu go bangishes engine uga in dakit siwe engine endama. Kuna ma shi uga tenjige kwe. Oh man. Manda tagot go dan endam. Ga in gwe kwenzin. Keshagan ashim de snap. I guess the sort, like offhand as I'm reading the two that sound fine, emnat takkin. I'm picking up a difference, like when I'm saying daigam gung disha wigish planak kwezgan. That I'm sort of regarding as like an exact equivalent of English infinitive. I go to the store to buy bread. Daigam gong disha gishpna na kwezgan. Okay, na tagot ni kit yeshkat. Ga go opportunik chimik says no. Initially, I thought, like when I thought, oh yeah, that sounds perfectly fine. My initial impression was that you're just speaking as a general thing you do. I go to the store to buy bread. A general observation of whatever, your life way. Migan endama yeshkat. But anchmi nog no amdama. Anchmi nog kidian daigam gong dishagish na kwezgan. I'm sort of gravitating towards the second version. That too is like a general. It's like, what do you do when you run out of bread? Well, I go to the store to buy it. Versus, well, I make it. I'm saying daston is inanimate awan kwezgan. But I do recall hearing in some communities it's animate. So yeah, I know why you're saying gishpnanak. I would say gishpnadon. Yeah, happens to be animate. Just the way I'm used to hearing it. Yeah, and again, usually it's like, okay. The more examples I see, maybe something will sort of click in. I think this is why. But often when I'm seeing we, I'm thinking, automatically translating in my mind to English. Yeah, that's like the English infinitive to do something.
In this case, we're using we. Does it have to do with the fact that this is something that I'm choosing to do? Like this is my intention to buy the bread? Versus if there was another case where it was someone else if it was up to someone else or it was something out of my control, then in that case it might be like duh or gay. Let me see if I can.
I'm thinking offhand. I'm going to tone the diagram gong ja. Oh yeah, no. Nin tam ganjamach da diagram gong deja tagishpna do up question. I'm automatically going inanimate on you. Same difference. The tense markers aren't affected, whether it's animate or inanimate noun. Diagram gong deja tagishpna do up question. For sure, that guy dakit siwe. Guy mixes no je da wikiran. We ishpna do wa da shrigo mixe. Sam dus go infinitive shagana shimang. Yeah, like generally, like we, like for starters, we is often labeled an intentional prefix. Quick with bajma, to be honest, Yeah, I've never sorted out the difference, the exact fundamental difference between, other than will is definitive future, going to, or in Nishnaabemwin we is intentional future. I've never really sorted out the difference. I can just think in terms of, okay, if in English we say this, then we can say this in Nishnaabemang. I'm going to the store to buy bread. No, I'm going to the shop, going to be Eshki-nishnaabemjig. Yeah, even in English it doesn't work. Like if you say, I'm going to the store, will buy bread, it doesn't work. Just the will doesn't line up with the idea of why you're going to the store. Just the infinitive just works on that naturally in English. Okay. But depending on the sentences I'm working with, sometimes when I'm translating back into English, although I'm using we, the English phrasing just sounds odd if I stick to going to. Then will I'm just forced to go with will in English, even though I'm using we. That's what I'm sort of sometimes. I haven't sorted out what's going on there. But apart from that. Okay. Okay, go na a bit tejanda. Mina ina. Nege Giizsookwe. Gaa-kinoomaaged when we gonna them B mean C forms Giizsookwe. Giizsookwe. It's been a long time since we met to talk about how you're doing living overseas with your kids growing up in another culture that's so different from how you grow up. And that particular string of ideas, I would probably, like naturally, I would express those in sort of like break it up into two smaller sentences, sort of smaller. Although we do have certain things we can say like in a string of clauses like that. That doesn't happen to be one of them. But let me tackle this one. Giizsookwe kan kweshgadadiangaba we the bad the mung ejmajish kain kchigaming dain Giizsookwe Niibing kan gojidnung kan goj. The idea of culture is a bit hard to translate because it's not a Nishnaabemwin term. It's like we say the way they live, sort of gets at the idea. Memdege chipkanak madazinit ode yabmajin pidashge Gaa-kinoomaaged. Like I'm just working off straight translation. I don't know if that kind of string of thoughts would naturally pop into my head if I happen to know a good friend who in that situation. Let me try this out. Yeah, I think naturally, I would just naturally break up the idea in like 2 or 3 different like chunks, eh? Oh, it's been a long time since I saw you. Yeah, instead of simply saying since we met, I'd probably naturally gravitate to since I saw you. And then I would just learn, instead of saying to talk about how you're doing, oh, Eshki-nishnaabemjig. So how are you guys doing? Giizsookwe. How are your kids? Question mark. They must find it strange, like strange, different. Growing, like living with other people who live a different way. That's probably how I'd handle it, something like that, eh? And just short, Chirarugan kweshkada diyungba, magi chiraruga minnamba. Anishnagegi, how are you? And how are your kids? Oh, they must find it very strange or very different. So strange. Oh, dim miaik chigaming. Pekan mim de madasuatode be madsijik. Living across the ocean where people live in such a different way. Me geshchiam bageni. Ich bin nin jim kwendamawe, not working off a translation. Just me actually running into somebody in that situation.
Pokemon. Matan.
Guy Pokemon dus nikas si. Gudon patch ni kash. Gudon patch ni kash. Yeah, how?
I understand it's kind of an artificial example. I was just seeing if we sort of force a translation where there's going to be subordinate clauses.
You can done go. Yeah.
Like how would you structure that? I know a lot of real examples are never going to get to 3 levels of subordination, but I was just wondering if there is some sort of pattern of what you would do in terms of using BRC.
Yeah, we certainly can have a sentence with more than one subordinate clause. I routinely find myself spitting those out in normal everyday life.
So then, I'm just wondering maybe if we just sort of, if you try writing out something like that, sort of analyze whether you're choosing B or C forms and if there's any kind of pattern to that.
Yeah. Generally, like if you have a string of clauses like that, I guess one way to sort of check it. Raganashimang, like, I finally got into grammar concepts. English was my worst subject in grade school. I always tell people I got lost with English grammar the day I was sick and missed a day. Next day they were talking about predicates, and I was lost. And I wasn't sure, are they saying predicates? Or I thought they were saying predicates. Is the word predicate, Marty? Predicate. When I had to start teaching, I had to start referring to English grammar just so I could find labels to use for things, It says, predicate. Oh, now I understand what it is. Anyhow. And so again, talking about these A forms, B forms, I thought, B forms, if they're not in a what, where, when, how, why question, they're like working like a subordinate clause. Because if we say that part, Jean, it's like saying, me going, it's like the thought is complete. The other speaker or the other Nishnaabe is going to wonder there. What about when she goes somewhere? Anish, what? Okay, subordinate clause. That's how you tell it's a subordinate clause. Now, some of these happen to, and again, I know these are like sort of artificial examples just to test out patterns. That's when he started to understand what happens to him when he decides to eat what he knows that he shouldn't eat. Mi majin sastang eje bezit ishpin mijit gego gekendang gemich sipa. Yeah, that one is piece of cake. Just kidding. Some of these coincidentally, kikendanan are preverbs. Kikendanan preverbs. You know the idea behind preverbs. In English, often a phrase like "start to do something." We don't need a different verb in Nishnaabemwin for start. We just need the verb for what are you going to start doing? What's the doing part of that? The actual, the main idea, the main action. So we start using stuff like maji, or bone, or ke, and so on. So that's what made this one easy. Anyhow. I'm trying to think of examples. If you think of an example before me, try it out. Okay. Okay, here's the thing where Jin actually pops up in my mind. Good. Now how? Kege tigo we mushkin danendum. Mage danis kanona ka da kege tigo manda kana manda danan danis. Go kid up nungo ode jibo we kijunak nuichke we baba min kyang nisha jibo bejat. Ja. Anish man pien kam gak. Manda shanda kidwin en kazia. Bekan sit gando op ma mak bigan wana kazia. Ajo e pat go e. Ki kenda na de babe. Mi manda shanda en kazia. Manda ge shanda. Wikituna, dan kazen. Kikendana nuichke. We baba min keang. Kikendana min ke. Nisha jiboa bejat. Kikendana bejat. Now. Kegunage abesheg duk kendana. Kikendana edming besha manda kikendana. Kikendana manda wikijuna. Wikijuna. Nee wikijuna. Kishpen guche wishan. Oh. Tim Hortons nu para. Majan, wiju shingegi. Ambe, shada Tim Hortons. Do wikijuna. Oh, bishan gegi, machan, bai jushin. Miwe, wikijuna kaguya. Mage, oh. Adrian Sutherland, yeah, we've been the gumma. Oh, no, mada, Adrian Sutherland, obzindoda. Machan, bai jushin, ambe. Kudo wikijunin. Kiriani, but we jushin. Me when we kijuna. Manda dishki kendana the babe. Ich bin ne. Maybe so again the win quib manda mikan. Me dish ode. Basic kamak mikan. Maybe so again. Queen quibis. Kanama ode ni king, guishama jeepis. Mage ode ni king. And quibis saying. Guy went to go name. Maybe so again I went to go. Oh no how. Nen gach the ken gabis. Could okay the bop. We are in a beach bisa. Guy, now, ngan quibis. Could okay the bop. We are in a beach bisa. Oh, guy. Mageni. Abdik. Nu she got esse. Guy, the guy McQuincy not get goes on the deck. Magege go ne. Do be to get up on. Oh. Gift action, some guy in the popsy. Me to go want you again. We bop taction on good, not kid bop. Oh, get on a jet. Aha. Gi kid bop. Mr. Tana, the Bobby. Me. Get a ken up and good. Get on a te. Wop tax kagia, mage, wop tax kamagi spin. Me with the Bobby. Me with Penny, get all the bop, shit again anyway. Anish pige abe, we up the get Anish pige abe and good to the bop paguya. Mage. Mage benoching tam noat. Den dag zoek kwakket papagedona. We going besha. Was it to te we going? Misa papagedot kwakket. Kai de bab siuk. Eshki-nishnaabemjig. As not a babik. Was it chicken we bop the on the meg? Gispin the bab sigop kwakket pagadot. Gaa-kinoomaaged. Was it chickening? Optaxing kwakket misa. Pixkak was it chicken. Me, ich bin benoching bot babet. Ich bin kitchedam not benoching. Mage ne kwakketam. Which we put a mot. Aber ik weet about wat kegels en de wie going. Was it chicken? The taxes no kwakket. The babik en the kiek. The babik. Odin the king. Pagadamak. Mage odin the king. Naganandamak. The babik. Was it chicken? We bop the ganandamak. Me, the babe.
You know, Giizsookwe zagigan.
Oh, we go in. We go in Giizsookwe. Aber dek. Aber dek we the babing jabo ging zagiganing. Gaa-kinoomaaged ashbik tek. Gaa-kinoomaaged pangishet queen the gonken goche. Gabo question. Gaapata kise. Aber dek we the babing jabo ging. Me, gegette. Gegette go. Go eat. I'm not talking about the beach. I'm going to boys. Me with the baby. Now, me the shwe, I'm good no gay. Manda this guy we go in Nissan Sino. When they get about the ma, me knang me besang. Ich bin der Babsion, Jabon Quebsein, Nisanet, da Bangadak Chip Takskak. Ich bin der Babsion, Jabon Gugin, Nisanet, Gada Opposition, ich bin Ashbik Jetek. Benoching, that the minot, Cockut Chidam not, the Babsigo, Nisanet, the Samt up, Chippy Guana, was it again? Got a sugar panen Nisan Sino, and the Babian. Man peep and the Kidia the Baby. Nee, right to go. Enter the babia. Nee, I will wish websino. I will go nee. Nuin bossy. Mage guy we go. Wish cock usino. Nee, right to Giizsookwe. Giizsookwe batin sinuk meanen. Nishan which can Giizsookwe the beja. Giizsookwe batin sinuk, Giizsookwe the mak. Na how, majan? O min keda. Kidia, Giizsookwe the babsua. Isan which can, one how, min kapachi and min cane, Nishangode. Hey, I go from the meanan, Nishagi wikichish. Me the mean tam walking to the babia. Nin chike, nka odo bab. Na how? Batin don the meanan. Oh, batin don. Mr. the Majibi mog which can. Ajan. Bimin ken, kababi in. Ani spiege bedoshnan. Patin don meanen. Giizsookwe ne od babia wam de man even a meanen. Nishin. Me we waonje kid babia. Sam Giizsookwe od bab sewa. Oh, me the Giizsookwe batinak, me said the wikichunak nuich ken. We bawamin kang. Miwe, Gaa Nishnaabemjig. Gaa meanen de debananen. Gaa Niibing de debananen. Me man de kinna enje kidia. We kagon dana, kikendana ke. Oge. Anen, we kwam kong mem de get kosudoat kidwinnen. Negina man de morskin kidden awen. Kawe. Minnesota the king, me which Oshme Moshkin Gigidot. Nga okawe the bab. Nungo ode chiboa, wikitunak. Giizsookwe, Wibuba, Mine Keang, Nisha, Jeboab, Bejat. We came Congress gain or that one Gidonuk. Niibing would Kosudona, me we Ke engine Tagok, Pane, we came Kong. Kegunaman Pigwam Dana ancestors work. Kegunaman Pigwam Dana ancestors work. Mage Kinanago Kidwin Jegdon Sastana. Kinago Kidwin and Gdon Sastana Anje. Man, da Gdon Sastana is in the cousin Nisha. Me and it Takidot Nishnabemwin. Oh, the Schuna. Anish Nishage kidding giver.
Giizpen in the Gaa-kinoomaaged.
Oh, BTS Giizsookwe.
Meanwhile,
oh, Minagate, Hobishkiamado BTS. Oh, Giwi Dasuma, sugar. Ah, the Shagan ticket. I spent the way to a son. Panic and I, the Nishaga ticket. Nishaga ticket. Ah. Giizsookwe, and you get them.
Giizpen Ajigo Saknagade Minoa
Gaa-kinoomaaged.
Giizpen Gaa-kinoomaaged Gaa-kinoomaaged Dash Nisha Ingija.
Giizpen Kenziwan Gaa-kinoomaaged Daigamik. Oh, and Gake Panadin Geguguna. Mr. Dushnan Daigam. Oh, Rajigi Gaa-kinoomaaged Nishangija. Gaingi Debenazin Wayamamba. Nishangija. Me and Gooding Nisha is in a cousin. We Giizpen Kirat Gego de Boy to us what I'm about de Boy see. Giizsookwe Maba, Nenderman. Kikendan Giizsookwe? Giizsookwe. Mage Gigibasmik. Kai de Boy see. Veshkoni, Ajwebkiba. Wa. Nishko Manti. Nishtanan Sapun Giskida. Why de Boy see wa? Giizsookwe. Ushme Giizsookwe. Gai de Boy see. Ushmek Chipit Zua. Gai at the Nishtana. Miwe Giizsookwe. Nee, Piwani Boyang. Shajugana. Mina, Nse Basic. Keep it an ocean. Oh, I'm Dawijan. Oh. I'm the boy to see. Nishama Bando Pugachi Ekindinendum. Kchinakumegat Nini Boyme. Oh, I'm Dawijan. Nishaga the kitten dinner. Get thick sugar, Dick. Ah, get a boy toast known dinner. Ani dashin dinner. Oh, Akazigam gung there. Nishaga the kit. Get the go. Oh, Shkikin and man Pia, kidder. We know Nana, Dick Shkikin. Now, I'm going to Shkikin. Miss some Shkikin, even keeping it at Geisha. Hello, your brother really is in the hospital. Guy in a shaggy kit scene say, get to go down at a Montpini. Min can a swap an egg and the Butchki kid with the Guia. You can done an angle chickens can a man pietic oxing. Kutoga Gijimus a day got on a miss. Giizpen Bashkichi Eshki-nishnaabemjig. Optinas again dagot. Aber de qui bucin go. Mina de daga ushu ebisitten se pi wini well. Mish gai hipe de jassi. Nishandik ginendem. Dopugati kak ginendem. Ke get to the sugar. Pakazigam gongia abdik. Mi win Nishra is in a casang not gego. They boy Giizsookwe. They boy tosut Nishnaabemjig. Now. Nee, nanda could no one much Gaa-kinoomaaged. Me nanda nee, Eshki-nishnaabemjig B forms na. Wiki-junak. Manda gispinde no wina kasien, me mandan doin dagok. Jabo wiki-junak. Jabo na quick. Jabo manazwok. Jabo wabmak. What's going to go? And which can we baba min kyang. We ba min kyang. Nin min wan which can. Giinwag gedebajma tonim ma ban debajma. Jabo ba min kyang. Nin min wan which can. Nisha jabo bejat. Migo mino amanda B form Eshki-nishnaabemjig. Now, when Eshki-nishnaabemjig Nishnaabemwin ganama Giizsookwe okay the option Giizsookwe tesnok minen gego. Aber nuitske Giizsookwe Nishnaabemwin. Mi mabaje debatjmuk. Mi mabaje enjebit. Now, I don't know if you're noticing that, and I haven't thought about a way to explain it. Man pije boa, doje bian, de wiskogana basic prefix, preverb, yegenama. Preverbs, I'm up with a verb, but I'm done now. Man pidas, nish, does in a kasnakna. Pekan donananda, pekan man pindan jikit jibwa, mina man pekan man pindan jikit. Ich bin kurz mit go. Oh, Nishnaabemwin manian. Go ke the bap nang go ode jibwa wiki-junak nuitske we baba min kyang. Nisha jibwa bejat. Nishnaabemwin. I'll go and check visually, is the implicit idea, with my eyes. I'll go and check visually first. First as in before doing something else, not first before others, just first before doing something else. Nanga. Either this time or today, whichever, either way makes sense. Ode, over there. Before I invite her, her being my friend, before I invite my friend, to go blueberry picking. Now, in English, you're not hearing any person in that part. I'll go and check first today. I'll go and check over there first today before I invite my friend to go blueberry picking. But in Nishnaabemwin, because you've got a verb, you have to indicate somebody doing that. You can't just say jibwa, we baba min ke. You got to indicate who's going to be picking blueberries, if there's enough of them. Okay, who? Nin minwa nuitske. Us, me and my friend. Before I invite my friend for us to go blueberry picking, so that the natural translation that comes into my mind is, I'm not saying that this that these mean so that, just as a whole, given that whole context, the natural thing that pops into my mind in English is, so that she doesn't come for nothing. Now, interestingly, the other thing I'm always harping on when I would teach students is, oh, if you've got the word not in English, you got to have this negative piece in Nishnaabemwin, guy blah 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 sea, or guy blah snow, or whatever. But over here, in this case, I guess it's implicit. It needs nothing explicit in Nishnaabemwin. Like, given all that, so that she doesn't come for nothing. So I don't know how all that, like, if that's part of why je pops up in my mind here. And bois comes up a lot when we're talking about, like, so that something, I was going to say so that something doesn't happen. I'd better think about this some more. But however, yeah, sometimes it doesn't work fully when you're trying to sort out in English, like just Nishnaabemwin works differently for certain ideas, eh? As Rand now and then says to me, all grammars leak. No normal human speech conforms 100% to the grammar rules that grammarians, find as they're analyzing the way language works, or that they figure this is the way it should work. Yeah. Some ideas just don't conform to the grammar rules that have been figured out. So in your case about the diagamic that Eshki-nishnaabemjig Giizsookwe Eshki-nishnaabemjig oh, diagam-gong nui, diagam-gong nui sha, kishpin kidien, diagam-gong nui sha. Oh, kendak kenjigen. When do it in saxing? Nisha ode jeboa jayin. Kendak kenjigen. Google, saxin the diagamic megwa. Google, mandapin saxin. Oh, now, gasha. Kishpin kendak kenjigen. Nisha jeboa jayin. Ode. Weshkoga joe beseang. July matagisit ka. July nijgudn gisit. Gujigunda nisngim kwendana. Oh, saxin dik diagamic dinendame. Saxin dik. Namegi kun saxin on diagam gun. Saxin dik diagamic dinendame. Bisigi shang. Ah. Gitchemenchizme. Oh, come on, kwigade. Nishangi jame. Some guy gishangi kendak kenjigesime. Appajugungi go kwendame. On saxin dik dinendame. Gaidish in saxis no. Nishangi jame. Kein dakidam nishawi boa bishat. Kana butchugunda kit meshkut nishawi boa bishat. Gai we go abadek je. Nishage boa bishat. Gai in a butch. Gai in a butch. Kana ma Niibing ching nokwenda. Now there's we get to get chip pieces it. The mama mother zip. Dagi kid wokna ge boa bishat. Kuna mago dagi kid wokan dinendam. Keni nwege gup kan bangi Indonesian gadasime ejigi gidang. Midas nang gutnang. Mi mande ejik kitang dinendame. Kuna madas. Oh, I bet to manda. Yeah, sometimes like I'm almost thinking "ge" might sound good. I'm thinking it might sort of be when we vary it in certain ways. It might be sort of what you do in English sometimes to speak in a more like stylized way, maybe for rhetorical purposes. Like authors, when they write books, they write in certain ways depending on what they want to convey in writing to the reader, eh? They pick how they express their thoughts. Although we're not consciously doing that, that might be sort of be the unconscious impulse for us to select certain forms that we sort of have a rhetorical sensibility working in the back of our minds. Like, this is going to have a certain effect if it's said this way rather than the basic, straightforward, factual information. So she doesn't come out there for nothing. Man the kidding go kid about and go to Jabo, we could not reach can we bomb in Kang, the Shajabo Bishop. You're making me start to second and third and fourth guess myself. Oh, go. Gaa-kinoomaaged in Nishnaabemwin. Gaa-kinoomaaged wash it cake. Shagnandike. Me sure get it. It's like yeah, like languages change over the generations as I sometimes think. Yeah, I can imagine. Perhaps if my grandmother, who I think, from what I gather from the sparse records, came into this world around the 1880s, perhaps, or the 1890s. Yeah, she might find this kind of strange wording. Who knows if she were around? Who knows? But don't start me the shwiga. Don't start me. Giizsookwe don't start me. Don't start me. I guess fundamentally it's about, do you understand each other? Maybe that's why Rand